We are joined by TMZ Sports senior producer Mike Babcock to tell us all about the Tiger Woods car accident. Mike, welcome to the Odd
What's
Couple.
happening?
Chris, Rob, thank you for having me, fellas. I appreciate it.
No
No, great
doubt.
to have you on. And now, look, this accident took place around the Rolling Hills Estates and Rancho Palos Verdes, where it's very curvy and there's a steep incline or decline. Like, tell us about this. How dangerous is the area for drivers that Tiger Woods was in?
It's a very dangerous area, and I'll tell you guys, if you talk to the people who live in that area, they will tell you about the sheer number of accidents, of car accidents that have happened in that area, essentially in the same spot as where Tiger crashed. And you're talking about bad accidents, fatal accidents. So that area has really been a trouble area over the years. It's in many places it's downhill, it's curvy. And you can just imagine if you're someone like Tiger Woods who isn't intimately familiar with the area, where you get going a little bit faster and you could get yourself in a bad situation.
Now it's reported basically that Tiger was speeding because he was running late. He was supposed to meet Drew Brees and Justin Herbert. Is that what most people are reporting or is out there?
Look, here's what we know, and everyone's trying to figure out, what happened. The accident happened around 7:12 a.m. So while early, the sun was out. We know out here in LA, it was a sunny day today. It was clear, so it doesn't appear that weather would be a factor. You wonder, could any substances have led to this happening? Well, the police have said that it doesn't appear that alcohol or any other, illicit drugs or anything like that was at play here.
Now let me ask you this real quick. I'm just interrupting
Yeah,
because you brought up the drug thing or the alcohol. Do
yeah.
you know if at a crash site, obviously they're taking him to the hospital, they got to wedge him out of the car. I mean, do they ask him to blow right then and there, or how do they do you know what I mean? Like you're about to go to the
Yeah,
hospital.
right. Look, not in this situation because he was in such rough shape.
Right.
Look, he was lucid, so it wasn't life or death in that moment. But he was bad. You're talking about two broken legs, some really serious injuries here. So no, they didn't have him blow on the scene. But obviously,
Okay.
once they get Tiger off to the hospital, make sure he gets his medical needs taken care of first. They investigate the car. Is there alcohol? Are there open bottles, the cans in the
And
car?
maybe what he
There were
smells
no
like.
They said they were smelling
Right.
for his
Nothing.
breath,
And
yeah.
they have told us, and then the sheriff went on television and said this. He said no signs of alcohol. In fact, we've actually been told that they don't suspect that any substance had anything to do with this, so much so that they didn't even have any cause, at least not as of a few hours ago, to take Tiger Woods' blood in the hospital. So that really shows you, the police is thinking on this. And from my experience and from people I've talked to, it doesn't appear that they believe that alcohol or drugs had anything to do with this. So then you wonder, guys, okay, why did he crash? So, I suppose it could have just been bad luck. They are going to investigate whether speed may have been at play here. The police have told us that, again, we know, dangerous area. People go fast in that area. It's can be a fun road to drive on, and maybe your speed gets up there. What I can say is, we talked to somebody that was staying at the same hotel as Tiger, and they just happened to have been shooting the television show Grownish, where Tiger was staying at that hotel. The director of Grownish, when he got to work at about 7 a.m., came in and told his staff that while he was pulling into the parking lot, that he was almost hit by Tiger Woods, who was himself speeding out of the parking lot. Then obviously,
Wow.
he was shaken up enough that he told his
Right,
people
it was
that,
that
hey,
bad,
this
right,
almost
that you
happened.
would tell somebody,
Right,
right.
and this is before the accident. So obviously, then it becomes news. About 30 minutes later, when Tiger gets in this really bad wreck, but before Tiger even crashed, he was telling his people that, hey, Tiger Woods almost just hit me with his car. So look, that doesn't mean that Tiger was speeding. I think it merely is it's an anecdotal story, and it might paint a little bit of a picture of Tiger being in a rush to get where he was going.
Yeah, it seems like, putting two and two together, that he was going to film for his, golf television series, where he golfs with celebrities, and that's where Herbert and Drew Brees come in, and maybe he was running late. It was at 8 a.m., but yeah, he was wearing his seatbelt. Maybe thankfully, I mean, has anybody said anything about whether or not that may have saved his life?
Yeah, that's what the police have said, flat out, guys. They said that they believe that this wearing the seatbelt and the airbag deploying saved his life, because they said it themselves. They said we've seen crashes that look far less severe than this one end up being fatal, and the fact that not just broken legs, because these are really serious injuries, but the fact that Tiger Woods is going to walk away from this ultimately with his life, I think. It's a scary situation. I know we all want to see Tiger out there golfing and winning tournaments, and the sport's just better when he's involved. And I don't know at 47 if with the back injuries and the knee injuries and now dealing with this, if he ever comes back and plays competitively again. But I think the bottom line has got to be that we probably came close to losing Tiger Woods today, one of the most iconic athletes of our generation.
And we might have lost him on the golf course, like never to see him. You know what I mean? Do what he did. And
it'd be hard, it's hard for me to imagine him coming back from this, Rob. It really is.
It is, because they say
at his age,
with the leg fracture, they're saying it included a compound fracture and a shattered ankle. Like that's a lot.
Right, and then add in the other things that he was already dealing with from a physical standpoint at his age. It's tough for me to imagine seeing him back out there, and that it sucks. It sucks. I want to see Tiger out there, but I think it could have been far worse.
Right. To your point, look, if he's able to, resume quote unquote normal life with his health, then golf obviously is secondary. Mike, we thank you for your time, man. Great insight, Mike. TMZ
Anytime,
Sports
guys.
senior producer. Me. Yes, thank you very much. Keep up the great work. All right, we have a special guest, and you will understand what I mean when I introduce him momentarily. But first, former LAPD police chief David Gascon joining us on The Odd Couple. David, welcome.
Mr. Gascon, what's happening?
How you guys doing?
We are great. Great to have you on.
Let me clarify something. So I don't want Bernard Parks to get angry with me. I was his chief of staff and his assistant chief of police.
Okay.
Yes, that needs to be clarified. We appreciate that.
You bet.
And look, we love your son. Great job raising him. We always fool around with him on our show. So
and Chris owes him a steak dinner. So if your son loses a couple pounds, that means Chris hasn't paid up yet.
I'm about to send him a gift card from Sizzler, so that'll be in the mail any day.
I think he's more a Ruth Chris.
Yes, sir.
I think everybody is.
Everybody's a Ruth Chris fan, no doubt.
Right. But we thank you for joining us, though, to talk about this situation with Tiger Woods. And we were just on with TMZ, with one of their producers, and we were talking about the accident, where the accident was at, the Rolling Hills Estates and Rancho Palos Verdes. And it seems like from all the reports that's really a dangerous area, a lot of curves, a lot of hills. And according to the guy from TMZ, a lot of the neighbors, the people that live in that area, talk about how it's commonplace for there to be accidents with drivers. Do you feel like, and I hope I'm not out overstepping my bounds, does something need to be done, though, with that area if it's that dangerous?
Well, let's back up a little bit. Since I live in that area and know the area well and have driven those streets forever, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but so it's like any other situation, okay? The basic speed law in California always applies. And that is, you can't drive faster than what is safe for the conditions, okay? Now, what gets people there is that when you start going downhill, you gather speed. And, if a speed limit could be, let's say, 45 miles an hour, and you start going downhill at 45 miles an hour, there's very little that's going to slow you down. In fact, you're going to gain speed. Right. So unless you're very mindful of speed and start hitting the brakes or maybe riding the brakes, tapping them, slow yourself down, then speed can get away from you. Now, there are some curves on the roadway, but there's nothing that I would classify as exceptionally testing. But if the faster you go, the more difficult it can be for you. Now, you also have to take other considerations into your mind as you're traversing this area, and that is, are there distractions? Are there vehicles? Are there animals? Are there cell phones? Are there other issues involved? So you've heard the Sheriff's Department address the fact that there didn't appear to be anything related to an altered state. And I take it they're talking about chemicals, alcohol or drugs, etc., that gave them any kind of probable cause to believe that was part of the problem. But you also heard them allude to maybe the speed was an issue. Well, remember, no matter what the roadway, you can never drive the roadway faster than is reasonable and safe under the conditions. So those conditions will change if it's raining or if it's snowing, you know, those kinds of things.
Let me ask you this. From your experience, they're ruling out, like you say, the altered state and drugs or alcohol, at least at this point. What is the percentage, though, of a single car crash where alcohol or drugs or something is you know, a part of that equation? Is it pretty high, or is it more common than not that people crash their cars, you know, without that? Because it just doesn't seem that often a single car crash.
Yeah.
There isn't something involved.
So, Rob, it's a way more complicated question.
Yes.
You would think we could just put that in and the data would kick out. But, you know, years and years ago when I was a young police officer, for example, we used to take traffic accident reports when there was damage to the vehicle. And then it got to the point, well, it had to be a significant amount of damage. Then it got to the point where it was damage with injuries. Essentially, you ended up having accidents that never got reported. And so the data is soft data, so you don't really know. Are there single vehicle accidents that happen all over the place? Yes, all the time. In fact, anytime you're parking a car and you hit a curb and damage your car, that's unintentional. That's essentially a collision that you'd call as an accident. But on a roadway, when you're moving at, shall we say, a speed of 35 to 65 miles an hour, there's going to be significant damage and there's going to be a likelihood of injury. Thank God in this situation here, he had everything going for him that today's technology and the requirements that we have for safe operations of vehicle, they were all in effect because he was belted in and he had a new vehicle that apparently had airbags all the way around, the maximum safety. And looking at that vehicle, and I was a traffic lieutenant and I was also a traffic captain, it would be very easy for me to say that could have easily been a fatal traffic accident.
It sounds, and we're joined by David Gascon and your former assistant police chief for the LAPD. Did I get that correct?
You got it.
Great. It said TMZ told us the accident was at like 7:12 and that people arrived on the scene at 7:18. So thankfully they got there quickly. How much of a factor was that, do you think, in saving Tiger's life? I mean, had they not been there, you know, maybe 15 minutes later, how big of a difference would that have been?
Well, we know that if you're in a remote area of the country, it takes forever to get an ambulance or a law enforcement officer, even when they're traveling with red lights and siren. Here, this area is a little bit distant from, let's say, Lomita Station. You've heard that they are the responsible station of the Sheriff's Department for this area. It depends on the number of vehicles that they have deployed. When I heard the deputy tell the story, he got the call, he responded, did all the right things. You know, there's a tendency that we want to immediately extract somebody, but listening to the deputy, did the right thing. He made an assessment of the situation. And from his perspective, it didn't appear to him that Tiger was going to bleed out. Now, compound fractures or the type of injury that seems like he had are very, very serious events. And there's a certain amount of shock that sets in, and those things impact your body. But it did not appear to him that there was distress in his breathing or that he had a critical, shall we say, a bleeding incident that would cause his demise if there was not an extraction and immediate first aid. So he did what he needed to do to try to stabilize him and awaiting the paramedic response. And I can tell you we have some crackerjack paramedics all throughout Southern California. And to have them there and have them pull Tiger Woods from the vehicle, extract him, the one thing that's really critical is that they were handling him, they were handling his body, his legs, they were handling him perfectly. You see it on the football field all the time when you watch people run out with a neck injury and they're so careful with them. Well, it's the same thing at the scene of a major accident. The paramedics and whoever's there assisting them are doing everything they can not to make the situation worse and to try to stabilize the individual, and then they can transport from the scene.
Wow, that's great detail. We appreciate that. That's David Gascon, the former LAPD assistant police chief and dad of our man David Gascon.